Darrion Williams, RJ Lewis, Jamir Watkins. Who's the best option for KU still available in the transfer portal?
You are Locked On Jayhawks, your daily podcast on the Kansas Jayhawks. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on? Derek Johnson here. This is Locked On Jayhawks. Thanks for making it your first listen every day. Thank you to the everydayers catching each and every episode of the show. We are free and available on our YouTube page, where you can like and subscribe to the show, or anywhere that you get your podcasts. And on today's edition of Locked On Jayhawks, we're comparing and contrasting what I would say are the top three available portal wing targets still for KU. All of them still available in the portal, all of them testing the NBA draft process, comparing and contrasting Darrion Williams from Texas Tech, RJ Lewis from St. John's, and Jamir Watkins from Florida State. And, you know, I've kind of said coming in, like, Williams is my guy, but maybe that changes a little bit if we do a little side-by-side, head-to-head comparison between these guys. Before we get into any of that, this episode of the show is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase with Game Time. Okay, so Darrion Williams, RJ Lewis, Jamir Watkins. Those are three of the top available portal prospects at any position, but KU at this point needs another wing, and they need another splash play, and maybe they end up going overseas for it, right? Maybe it is a guy like Dame Sarr. Maybe it's somebody else overseas that we don't know about, right? But if they are going to go via the portal, those are the three that kind of make the most sense. And yes, there might be some other ones that we could get to as well, and we've had a deep dive on like Desmond Claude and stuff like that, but I think these are the three main ones. So I want to compare and contrast them. And let's start comparing Darrion Williams to RJ Lewis, because I think there are a lot of, interesting, some of the field goal percentages, the numbers are kind of similar in a lot of different ways. And I've kind of said that Williams is my guy, and then I'd have Lewis number two among these three coming in. But what if we compare and contrast? Okay, if we look at the points per game, Lewis has the advantage by about 3 points per game at St. John's. Now, Williams had to play with the Big 12 Player of the Year and JT Toppin, so that's going to lower some of the point per game. The effective field goal percentage, a little bit better for Williams, but, you know, neither guy necessarily jumps off the page. It is interesting when you look at, you know, Williams at 49.5% effective field goal percentage, because he's being judged in his percentile according to his position. It's only in the 30th percentile. But Lewis, who's being judged more as like a guard at a 48.3 effective field goal percentage, 47th percentile. What that tells me is that if Williams, you view him more as a, 3-4, like guard essentially on the offensive end, it actually is okay there. But he has a slight advantage anyway. Free throw attempt rate, Lewis gets to the free throw line at a much higher clip than Darrion Williams, which makes sense because Lewis is the more athletic, more slashing type of the two, even though Williams is somebody who can play a little bit more booty ball, can play a little bit like with his back to the basket in the post-up. Lewis is going to slash more. Lewis also more rebounds per game, slightly better offensive rebound rate, decently better defensive rebound rate than Darrion Williams when you're looking at Lewis. Now, again, if you go back to Darrion Williams' numbers before JT Toppin was there, a little bit better on the glass, but still Lewis the better rebounder there. Now, the passing, you would think Lewis, who's more of the guard, Williams, again, both of them would play the 3-4 for KU. I think Lewis more of the 3, Williams more of the 4. But you think of Lewis more as the guard, and Williams actually is the better passer. 3.6 assists per game, Lewis at 2. The assist rate is almost double for Darrion Williams of what it is for RJ Lewis. And the assist to turnover rate is also almost double. Williams had almost a 2 assist to turnover rate. Lewis was slightly under 1. So that's interesting there too. The steal rate is identical for the two players. The block rate actually better for Lewis. So again, bucking the trend. You would think the more forward type would be a little bit better there in terms of block rate, but no, it's actually Lewis. Hakeem rate, a little bit of an edge there for Lewis. Usage rate, both of them used it at a pretty high amount and high volume there. Williams had the better offensive win share numbers, the better on-off offensive rating, and also had the better offensive RAPM, which is kind of an overall metric used by CBB Analytics. So if you're just looking at those numbers, you would say, okay, Williams is a better offensive player. And then with Lewis, more defensive win shares, better on-off defensive rating, better DRAPM. And so it kind of adds up to everything we've kind of thought and talked about coming into this, the idea that, okay, Lewis is the better athlete. He's the better defender. Williams is the better floor spacer, the better offensive player overall because of his shooting and his passing ability. And so I think the stats and going through them kind of back that up to a high degree. What if we get into some of the shooting numbers, though, specifically? Because I mentioned that, and honestly, like, Lewis actually might come out slightly favorably in a vacuum here over Williams. But if we compare to the shooting, this is where Williams has his big edge up. So the field goal percentage is actually the same between the two. And again, if you're watching us on YouTube, we're showing a comparison of these. You might see the percentile. Like, it's funny, Williams and Lewis, again, same exact field goal percentage, but Williams is in the 30th percentile and Lewis is in the 71st. That's because it's being compared to their position. So Lewis is being compared to like other guards. Williams, again, is being compared to more forwards, which, you know, some forwards get mixed in there who are power forwards who they might shoot 60% because they're taking all their shots at the rim, right? So again, if you view Williams as more of like a kind of wing guard type on the offensive end, which kind of is, then, you know, you end up okay there. But anyway, 2-point percentage advantage for Williams, almost 49%, Lewis at 47.5%. At the rim, they're basically identical, both a little over 63%, but a slight edge for Darrion Williams. In the paint is where Williams has a big advantage. And I think this comes from Williams having such good touch. But Williams was 45% in the paint, which is CBB analytics. Refers to that as in the paint, but beyond 4.5 feet from the rim, because within 4.5 feet is at the rim. Lewis was only 32%. So much better like floater game and short mid-range game for Williams. Lewis was actually the better mid-range player, though, outside of the paint, 36%. Williams at 30%. I don't know how sticky that'll be year to year. But then 3-point percentage also looks identical, 34% for Williams, 33.6% for Lewis. I think you get them in a bigger variety and off more volume from Williams, but that's shown in the 3-point attempt rate. Williams, 65th percentile for 3-point attempt rate. Lewis in the 15th percentile for 3-point attempt rate. And again, different positions that kind of skew that a little bit. But above the break threes, Williams at 33.6%. Lewis is actually better at above the break at 35.2%. Williams much better corner threes, almost 38%. Lewis at about 31%. And then deep threes is actually Lewis, 35%. Williams only 21%. Not the best deep 3-point shooter. But then free throw percentage, advantage Williams, and basically the overall shooting numbers. The effective field goal percentage, advantage Williams. The true shooting percentage, advantage Williams. The PER, advantage Williams. But that said, a lot of those shooting numbers are at least similar, and there are a couple that go Lewis's way. But again, like, I keep coming back to the idea that, you know, this kind of is what you're expecting. I do think Lewis comes out overall actually looking pretty good in this comparison between the two players. And the fact that he does have the defensive edge and the athleticism edge, you know, you could make a real argument that Lewis should be the guy over Williams based on some of these numbers. I would still go with Williams preferably, but I will say after going over some of these numbers, I think it would be closer for me. Maybe it would be a 1A, 1B situation. The reason I would still go Williams is that at this point in time, what are the things that are most important for KU? They need more shooting. They need more shooting on this team. They need more floor spacing. They need more offense on this team. I actually really like the build they have on the defensive end of the court at this point, but they need more offense on the floor. I also like the idea that, okay, we don't know exactly how much is Flory going to be able to give you as a back to the basket scorer. Well, with Williams, if you get a smaller guard on him, if you get more of a 6'5" wing or whatever, he'll back you down in the post, and Bill Self will take advantage of that it gives you a little bit of that element on this year's team. So I would still lean Williams for the fit perspective, but, you know, I think there are a lot of advantages to having Lewis as well. All right, what if we compare Darrion Williams to Jamir Watkins? We'll also do a little comparison with Lewis to Watkins as well. This is Locked On Jayhawks. Today's episode of LOJ is brought to you by Game Time, where you can get all sorts of tickets to, you know, whether it's a sporting event, whether it's comedy, concerts, theater, if it's a nearby NBA playoff game or NHL playoff game, and you can be a part of it without the stress of last-minute ticket hunting. Game Time makes it fast and easy to get playoff tickets, even when demand is sky high. Prices on the app actually go down as tip-off gets closer, and their last-minute deals can save you up to $60. off. Here's why I use Game Time. Their last minute deals allow you to save that 60% off buying last minute for sports, up to, I should say, concerts, comedy, theater, and more. And the all in pricing that you can toggle means no surprise fees at checkout. What you see is what you pay. And it's great for baseball too, because a lot of times, like, you might not be booking out in advance. You might be like, let's go to the baseball game today, right? You can get them with Game Time on the same day. I'm looking right now, Royals hosting the Red Sox on Saturday. It's Bring Out the Blue t-shirt day. You can get tickets as low as $7. Let's see. I'm going to turn on the all-in pricing feature. I'm going to turn on the Game Time picks. Let's see. Here's Dugout Plaza for $76. And those are really solid seats there. You can go with Game Time. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets to Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCollege, LOCKEDONCOLLEGE, for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Thank you to everydayers catching each and every episode of the show. Thank you to you for tuning in here to Locked On Jayhawks. And don't forget, you can make Locked On College Football or Locked On College Basketball your second listen every day. Okay, what if we compare now from Darrion Williams to RJ Lewis? Darrion Williams now to Jamir Watkins. And Watkins, if you don't remember, we did a deep dive on him several weeks ago, and thank you to everydayers who already caught that one, from Florida State. Again, like 6'7" athletic wing. If you're talking about just size, Watkins might be the one to go with in terms of lengthiest. Williams would probably be the most strongest, and then Lewis, I don't know, Lewis or Watkins would be the most athletic. But anyway, Watkins, more points per game than Williams. Effective field goal percentage, again, slight advantage for Williams over Watkins there. Free throw attempt rate, the advantage goes to Jamir Watkins, and I think that might actually be a typo there in terms of how good the free throw attempt rate is for Watkins on this comparison, how it popped out. Anyway, rebounds per game, slight advantage for Watkins, but when you look at the rebound rates, it's actually Williams, the better offensive rebounder, Watkins, a slightly better defensive rebounder. But again, you look at the year before for Williams, before JT Toppin was there, and Williams would actually have the advantage here. Passing game, definitely advantage for Darrion Williams, because you're talking about 3.6 assists per game to 2.4, which doesn't sound like that big of a difference. And Watkins, a good passer, 16.3% assist rate, but the big difference is the assist to turnover rate. Williams, again, almost a 2 assist to turnover rate. Watkins under 0.9. So there is a big difference in those two. Steal rate, Williams over Watkins. Now, Watkins is known as a better defender than Williams. Williams kind of just known as being, just a neutral defender, I would say, is kind of the rub on him. With Watkins, he's known for being a plus defender, but it is interesting because some of the stats actually like Williams better here. Again, the steal rate better for Williams, though not by a huge margin. Block rate is better for Watkins, and the Keem rate a little bit better for Watkins, but it's close. Watkins also used the ball a little bit more, usage rate, but again, high for both guys. But Williams better in offensive win shares, defensive win shares, on-off offensive rating, on-off defensive rating, on-off net rating, offensive RAPM, defensive RAPM, overall RAPM, just way better at all of these. Some of those numbers, though, can be clouded a little bit by team success, and Williams had it, whereas Watkins did not. And so that is going to make things look a little bit better there. At the same point in time, Williams does deserve credit for being on teams that do well. He was on a tournament team at Nevada. He was on back-to-back tournament teams at Texas Tech, including an Elite Eight team that probably should have beat Florida, who ended up winning the national championship. Whereas with Watkins, you're looking at being on back-to-back Florida State teams that were, right around 500, slightly above 500, just kind of mid-teens, right? So he does get credit for that, even though some of those advanced numbers may be clouded a little bit by that. But it is interesting, the defensive win share is slightly better for Williams than Watkins. Again, the on-off offensive rating, Williams, they were about 13 points better on offense when he was on the floor. For Watkins, it was about 3.5 points better. But again, going back to the idea that you view Watkins as he's known as being a good defender, yet Florida State was worse back-to-back seasons on the on-off defensive rating when he was on the floor. Now, for a guy who played a lot of minutes and was asked to do a lot for his team, I don't know. I again think that's a little bit clouded. I do think he's a good defender, but does that show some sort of limitations, right? Is he just a good defender instead of a great defender or something? Or is he above average defender instead of a good defender? I don't know. I don't have the answer to that because, again, you're talking about a negative defensive RAPM. It's just interesting when you kind of look at some of that stuff. Now, what about the shooting for these specific players? So Williams, better field goal percentage. Watkins, a better two-point percentage, though Williams better at the rim. I mentioned that Williams good in that floater range. Watkins is actually better, 48% in the paint. Watkins also a better mid-range player. He definitely takes more mid-range than Williams. The overall three-point percentage, Williams about 2 percentage points better, but the three-point attempt rate actually higher for Jamir Watkins, and that's just because Watkins was seeking shots, I guess would be one way to put it. But Williams better, both above the break by about 1%, and from the corner, 37.5% to 35%. Again, though, Williams was not great on the deep threes. Watkins was good at them, 34%. So that is a difference there. Solid advantage, almost 9 percentage points for Darrion Williams over Jamir Watkins in terms of free throw percentage. And then the effective field goal percentage, pretty even. Slight advantage Williams. True shooting percentage, actually advantage to Jamir Watkins, and then Williams with the slightly higher PER. So again, I kind of come away from this thinking similar things to the RJ Lewis one. Like, you come away from this thinking, okay, this is actually closer than you might think, and there are some advantages to Watkins. But I do think the difference in, whereas you're saying with Lewis to Williams, okay, Lewis definitively has like rebounding and some of these defensive numbers. With Watkins, you think he's a better defender, but some of the numbers don't show it, and he's not a better rebounder than Darrion Williams. So I do feel comfortably saying, like, I do like Williams better than Jamir Watkins, but how would we compare Watkins to Lewis? Because those are two players who they're a little bit more similar. Williams more of the shooter and the passer. With Lewis and Watkins, you're getting more of those athletic wings who can thrive in transition and play strong defense at the other end. So let's finish up by comparing those two next on Locked On Jayhawks. And this episode of Locked On Jayhawks is brought to you by Amazon Fire TV Stick 4K. Did you know your Fire TV is also an Xbox? You can turn any TV into your gaming and entertainment hub with Fire TV Stick 4K devices. No console required. Just grab your paired controller, subscribe or sign in to Xbox Game Pass Ultimate with EA Play included, and you're ready to play. Dive into hundreds of premium titles from EA Sports College Football's 25 to Call of Duty, Black Ops 6, and Avowed. As easily as you stream your favorite TV shows, it's gaming made simple, and it's all on your Fire TV. It's affordable and portable gaming. A lot cheaper to get a Fire TV stick than it is to get a new console. Play high-quality Xbox games at a fraction of the cost of a console. And if you already have a console, you're like, oh, okay, well, I don't need it. No, you could, because you probably have multiple TVs around your house. It's going to be cheaper to get a Fire TV Stick 4K device than getting a second console. Or what if you have, multiple kids who want to be playing different things in different rooms? Or what if you just want to travel with it? A lot easier to take Fire TV Stick with you on the road. It's a great way to get into Xbox 2 without spending as big of a cost on a console. And for someone like me who does like to game here and there, but, sometimes I don't have as much time to be able to do it. It is the perfect mix of convenient and satisfying for when I kind of need to scratch that itch. Head over to Amazon.com/FireTV Locked On to get started. The Xbox Game Pass Ultimate subscription and compatible controller are required. Available on select devices, including Fire TV Stick 4K 2nd Gen, Fire TV Stick 4K Max 1st and 2nd Gen, and Fire TV Cube, the 3rd generation. Finishing things up on this episode of Locked On Jayhawks. Okay, so let's say Darrion Williams decides to stay in the NBA draft, and let's say the international route doesn't work out for KU. Who do you go for? RJ Lewis or Jamir Watkins? And I think that one's interesting because they are similar players, and like I said, kind of more athletic wings. So the points is very similar. 18.4 points per game for Watkins versus 18.2 points per game for Lewis. And I will say again, Lewis, in the same way Williams did, gets credit for being on a better team, putting up similar numbers, a 31 win team versus a team who was under 20 wins. But Watkins, a better effective field goal percentage. Again, it's close, 49 to 48.3. Free throw attempt rate, better for Watkins than Lewis. And the rebound rate, better for Lewis. So if you're wanting more rebounding, Lewis is the answer. Now, we'll say Kansas having Flory Bidunga and Trey White, maybe feel okay with the rebounding. and you rather go for the scoring, right? Or maybe you're just like, let's keep going with the rebounding, and especially with not having a ton of big depth, right? So Lewis, the advantage, almost double the offensive rebound rate and a slightly better defensive rebound rate, though that one is close. The assists here are actually in favor of Watkins, better assist rate by about 4 percentage points and about half an assist per game. The assist to turnover rate is similar. Lewis, slight advantage there, though. Steals per game, Lewis with more steals per game, better steal rate. Again, do keep in mind that St. John's is running a system that is going to propagate steals a little bit, though. Block rate is advantage for Lewis, but 2.1%, 2%, pretty even. Hakeem rate, slight advantage for Lewis. Again, Watkins, higher usage rate than Lewis. Both are high, but maybe that makes it a little bit easier if it's a little lower to transition on to Kansas. And then in the same way that Watkins, win share and on-off numbers and RAPM numbers were lower than Williams, like across the board, it's the same thing with Lewis. And again, you factor in the team success, which he does get credit for, but it does weight these a little bit more. But still, offensive win shares 2.5 to 2.1 for Lewis. Defensive win shares 2.8 to 1.6. The on-off O rating when Lewis was on the floor, they were over 10 points per 100 possessions better when he was on the floor. With Watkins, it was 3.5. The defensive rating, Lewis, they were about 2 points better per 100 when he was on the floor in defense. Again, they were worse for Watkins of Florida State, even though he is known, and I think of him as being a at least solid defender. And then the OR APM, almost 3 times as much, a little more than that. The DR APM, much higher for Lewis than Watkins, and the overall RAPM is 6.3 to 0.9. So not really close there. So basically, when you're looking at it here, it's funny because this is like pretty more definitive than the comparisons of Williams to Lewis or Williams to Watkins, that there's a lot more check marks by the name of RJ Lewis than there are for Jamir Watkins. What about the shooting between the two of them? Because, that's why I would lean Williams over these two. The fact that, okay, Kansas needs shooting and Williams has the advantage there. Okay, what if, Williams does stay in the draft, then you have to go for one of these two players or something. Who would be the better shooter in that situation? Well, field goal percentage, advantage for Lewis by a little over 1%. 2-point percentage, though, advantage for Watkins. Now, Lewis is better at the rim, though it's close, 63.4% to 62.1%. Again, Watkins better in the paint with that floater range, 48% to 32%. Mid-range is advantage Lewis, but both of them were solid at it, 36 to 34. 3-point percentage is advantage Lewis, 33.6% to 32.1% for Watkins. But the 3-point attempt rate much higher for Jamir Watkins than RJ Lewis. And I think this is what's interesting. If you look at the 3-point percentage, so above the break threes, Lewis was 35.2%, Watkins was 32.8%. That's advantage Lewis. But the corner threes, advantage for Watkins, 35% to 31%. And why I find that interesting is a lot of times corner threes are ones you are not taking off the dribble. You have to be set up for the corner three. Somebody has to pass it to you. You're not seeing guys take step back threes from the corner that often, right? Whereas the above the break ends up being the ones on the dribble a little more often. Now, that's not always, and you still do have catch and shoot ones above the break as well. But more predominantly, the corner ones are ones that were set up for you. And when you look at Watkins, the usage he had to do at Florida State, and, it's a catch-22. It's like, okay, you were the best player on Florida State. You had to be the shot hunter for the team. At the same point in time, is that part of your DNA? And if you are taking bad shots or you are forcing shots up, Bill Self ain't going to like that. So can you find the balance there? Point being that if Watkins is willing to be more in the flow of the offense and not be a chucker at times, the 3-point percentage will go up. And so I think the ceiling of Watkins as a 3-point shooter is a little bit higher. But yeah, if we're just basing on the comparison of what happened last year, it's pretty even between the two of them. Deep threes, almost 35% for Lewis, a little over 34% for Watkins. Free throw percentage, both at 74.7%. And overall, the effective field goal percentage, Watkins at 49%, Lewis at 48.3%. The true shooting percentage, Watkins at 55.5%. Lewis at 52.5. Big reason why there's the free throw shooting, by the way, because that takes into account that, and Watkins took a lot of free throws. But overall, the PER, Lewis 21.3 to 20.4. And so I almost feel like the conversation of these two players comes down to floor versus ceiling. I almost feel like Lewis has the higher floor than Watkins, whereas with Watkins, it's like there is going to be a bit of an adjustment with the not being the go-to option and having the ball in his hands all the time and being the shot hunter, so to speak, on the team. I do think if you can fit him into the role, if you told me he committed to that specific role, I think I would take Watkins over Lewis after going through that comparison. The problem is we just saw Kansas try to do that with AJ Storr and Ryland Griffin, and it didn't really work out, right? We saw Kansas try to do it with Remy Martin. It didn't work out for a little bit, but it did work out in the end, and they won a title because of it. So it's like you can see the plus minus for the ceiling for it, but I still think I would go Williams 1, Lewis like a 1B, number 2, and then Watkins would be a close third. I'd be happy with any of them, but I do think that would still be my order. Where does Dame Sarr fit and all that? I don't know. He'd be somewhere between. He'd be after Williams for me as well. But again, I kind of view all of these as if they're ready to commit, you take them and then you move on from there. All right, I hope that was helpful for some people in kind of cross-comparing between those players, and who knows, maybe there'll be other targets that kind of emerge later on in the game. All right, this has been Locked On Jayhawks. You can find our show anywhere you get your podcast, including on our YouTube page. See you next time with LOJ.